in just a second. All righty, gentlemen.
Good morning.
If I could please have your attention. For folks joining us online, hello, hello. Couple of important things. I'll wait. Couple of important things. Number one, you are welcome to record on your own device if you'd like. Don't not video. If you want to record audio, that's totally fine. Couple of important things here, gentlemen. I will send out a screenshot of all of what we go over after the review session is over. I strongly do recommend that you take notes that can either be on your Surface or online via Google Doc or on paper, whatever you want to do, whatever you are most comfortable with.
I already run out of things here on my notes. Use your Surface, Chris.
Gentlemen, keep in mind, I'm going to do my best to go over everything that we can, okay? I will stay after 5 o'clock if folks have any questions. Again, you are not required to stay the entire time. You may go. If you need to go, please leave quietly. Gentlemen, if they're, please do not harm each other to take seats. Just go ahead, have one person take that seat, move on. Gentlemen, let me be very clear. This is a review session, not a gaming session. If you are here playing games and I see you, you will be asked to leave. So, gentlemen, please make sure that you are paying attention and that you are either taking notes or in some way, shape, or form thinking about the content. Very briefly, gentlemen, very briefly, the exam format, as you remember, right, as I talked about in class, it is 50 points in the final exam category. This is 20% of your grade, okay? Gentlemen, your 50 points is split up with 2 short answer questions with multiple parts in between, right? So I would estimate, I think my shortest one last year was about 14 questions. The longest one was about 18, okay? Remember, some of those questions are literally like, identify the crop in this picture, okay? Bullet points for some of them are okay, okay? Remember, gentlemen, the curveball here is that you will likely see something that you have not seen before on the exam, right? So, for example, right, you might see something like a photo, a cartoon that you haven't seen before in class, in lecture. That might show up on the final. You might be asked, gentlemen, to identify what that photo is, okay? Any questions before we get started? Yes, Nico. You will see photos or cartoons that you haven't seen before, but these are concepts that you've learned in class. Yep. Any other questions? All righty, gentlemen, we're going to start off with Unit 1. We're going to speed through this like Usain Bolt on crack. Here we go. Here we go. Gentlemen, one of the first things that we learned about were identities. We had 3 types of identities. The first one were chosen identities. Can someone give me an example? What is an example of a chosen identity? Chosen identity. Chosen identities. Justin. Yeah, so hair, like dyeing, dye hair. Absolutely. What else? Parker. Yeah, sports. I want to hear from 2 more or 3 more. Sorry. What other examples of chosen identities are there? Chosen identities. Diego? Yeah, food. 2 more. BK.
What do you wear?
Yeah. Your clothes. One more chosen identity, Ryan.
Job occupation.
Yeah. What job you work. Remember, chosen identities, right? Chosen identities are identities that can change over time. Identities that can change over time. Very good. Gentlemen, I want then to focus a little bit more on assigned identities. We have chosen identities. What are assigned identities? Assigned identities. Gotham. Yes. Right? Gender, sex. Right? Right? Gender is what, sex is what you're born as. Right? Gender, this idea that a gender can sometimes be fluid, so it might actually be a chosen identity, though some argue that it is more assigned. Right? What else? Caden?
Your eye color.
Yes, eye color. Yes, Joaquin.
Skin color.
Skin color. Two more. Ishan.
Age.
Age. One more. I will take Cruz.
Family.
Family, right? Right, gentlemen, assigned identities are things that you cannot change. Assigned identities are things that remain the same, that you cannot change, right? That are given to you, assigned to you, right? We also, gentlemen, learned about shared identities. Shared identities. What are some examples of shared identities that all of us share in this classroom? What are some shared identities all of us share? Pierce? Yep, we're all at Bellarmine right now. We have from two more. Two more. Arash. Is there anyone who's not an American citizen? That is something we do not share. Lucas Wong. Do we all live in America? Yes.
Wait, that's funny. Who said that?
There's one other one that's pretty obvious. Lorenzo? We're all reviewing,
Freshman.
right? Thomas?
We're all male.
Anyone identify as female?
Dominic, put that hand down.
Gentlemen, we're all in Mr. Lou's ethnic studies class, right? We're all going to take a final in the next couple of days, right? All of these are shared identities, right? All of these are shared identities. Now, gentlemen, we then learned about how these identities can interact with each other. Does anyone remember what that term was called? These identities interact with each other, right, to form...
Intersectionality.
We got a joke color.
To form different life experiences. Anyone remember what this was called? I will take Turho. Very good. Intersectionality. Right? It's this idea that these different aspects of our identity interact with each other to create different life experiences. Okay? Right? So someone who is, say, South Asian, right, male and poor has a very different life experience than someone who is Latino, Hispanic, rich, female and rich. Right? These two people's life experiences are very different from each other. Okay? Now, gentlemen, we then talked and transitioned to talking a little bit about race, ethnicity, and citizenship, right? And we sort of thought of it like a big funnel, right? Now, each of these things, race, ethnicity, and citizenship, refer to a different thing, right? Refer to a different idea. Can someone tell me, what does race refer to? What does race refer to? What does race refer to? Is that Ojas in the back?
Yeah, race is like a social concept refers to like your physical characteristics that determine what experience.
Very good. Gentlemen, race refers to your physical characteristics, right? Race refers to physical characteristics. It's the broadest category, right? What's the next narrow category? We go from race, and then we start getting more specific. What's the next one that you jump to? What's the next one you jump to, gentlemen? Is that Arush? Oh, no. Is that Ishan? Go ahead, Ishan.
Is it
Very good. We go from race to ethnicity. Can someone tell me, what does ethnicity refer to? Ethnicity refers to what? Mr. Smith?
Your background, whether culturally or place that you're from.
Very good. Ethnicity refers to your culture, right? Your culture, right? Gentlemen, what is the most narrow? What is the most narrow of the three? We've got race, then ethnicity, and then the most narrow, Mr. Flores? Nationality, which refers to what?
Where citizenship.
Very good. Right? So gentlemen, Mr. Liu, I am Asian, right? My ethnicity is Chinese, and then I am American because I have American citizenship, right? So I'm Asian, right? But there are many different types of Asians, right? Filipinos, Vietnamese people, Japanese people, right? I am Chinese, and my citizenship that I hold is American, right? Now, gentlemen, in addition, we talked a little bit about, we transitioned into talking about why it's important to understand race, ethnicity, and nationality. Does anyone remember there was sort of a survey that we take every 10 years that counts up how many people there are in the United States? What is that survey called? What is that survey called? Mr. Kazitorto. Very good, sir. The U.S. Census. The U.S. Census, right? Gentlemen, the U.S. Census is something that we have to take every 10 years, right? Counts the number of people in the U.S., right? It counts the number of people in the United States, right? What else does the U.S. Census determine?
Oh, I know.
What else does the U.S. Census determine? Kian.
Government funding in certain areas.
Very good. Government funding, right? If you remember, we watched a person who was advocating for more children's funding for children, right? There's one other thing that the U.S. Census determines. One other big thing. Mr. Liu. Yeah, political representation, right?
Brandon Liu? Mr. Liu?
Right? The seats in the House.
Josh.
The seats in the House of Representatives is determined by this funding, right? Determined by this funding, okay? Now, gentlemen, we also took a second to talk a little bit about how race, the definition of race, has changed over time, right? We talked a little bit about a casta system, right? We talked a little bit about a casta system, right? Right, we talked about a casta system. Well, I don't expect you to know who is at the top or who is at the bottom, right? Can someone tell me what was the problem with the casta system when it came to race? What was the problem with the casta system when it came to race? Oliver.
Oh, they would start to mix when different races had babies, so it was hard to separate them.
Yeah. Interracial marriages made race difficult to define. So if the caste system was based on bloodline, right? which is an abstract concept, that goes out the door. What does it get replaced with, gentlemen? We are no longer looking at bloodline to determine race. What are we looking at now?
Skin color.
Arjan. Skin color, right? Right. Now, gentlemen, there is this process. We have a process of when these more abstract ideas become concrete. Does anyone remember the term? Does anyone remember the term? Abstract ideas becoming concrete. Eduardo. Reification. Very good. Reification. Now, gentlemen, the last thing we talked about before we jump into Unit 2 is we talked a little bit about stereotypes. We talked about stereotypes. Can someone tell me how stereotypes are formed? How are they formed? How are they formed? I will take Ayushman.
When one person makes a general belief about an entire population based on one singularity experience.
Very good. Gentlemen, stereotypes are formed when someone makes an observation about one person and that observation gets applied to the entire ethnic group, right? I believe my example was like if Mr. Liu is driving, right, and I run a red light and you're standing there at the corner being like, hey, Mr. Liu, you are a bad driver, right? Which is true, I ran that red light. But then you apply that observation onto everyone who is Asian, right? Or everyone who is Chinese, right? Very good. Now, gentlemen, we have both positive and negative stereotypes, right?
All lead to negative consequences.
We have positive and negative stereotypes, right? Positive stereotypes are framed in a positive manner, right? So, like, for example, like all Asians are good at math is a positive stereotype. A negative stereotype, on the other hand, is framed in a negative manner, right? Those who are Asian cannot drive. Hyun.
Both stereotypes could be harmful though, because if it's good, it can set unrealistic expectations.
Very good. Gentlemen, both positive and negative stereotypes are harmful, as Kian mentioned, right? So at the end of the day, right, both of them are harmful because at the end of the day, they create unrealistic expectations for those positive stereotypes. Gentlemen, this concludes Unit 1. If you would like to take a picture of the board, please take this time. We're going to go ahead and take a picture. I will also take a picture myself.
Are you gonna show the picture? No, he's gonna show the
Five-year, 265 million. Oh my God!
You have 15 more seconds to take pictures.
What happens if Rockford deal? What? 5-year, 265 million. You guys are gonna be able to.
I'm a Patriots fan. I'm not a Niners fan.
Yeah, weird.
What's gonna be different? What's gonna be different?
That's like the worst thing that I've said.
I have it on my screen. I don't know how I can capture it. I don't know what. I don't actually really watch it.
Okay.
Damn, these notes are hella good. Got my portable charger, boy. Oh, these notes.
Get off the game.
Huh? Ari, get out of here.
Alrighty, gentlemen. Gentlemen, I'm going to go ahead and erase. I'm going to erase the board.
Do it.
Oh, Josh, you good in the back?
Oh, this.
I love you, Ojus.
Lean on your backside. You can't reach. What? Oh, lean on your backside.
The first meal was so easy, bro.
Huh? I didn't even move it.
No, you did earlier.
God,
Yeah, I was moving this guy.
You on that side.
Hey, actually, don't move his though. He has a live stream.
Wow, see, that's how he's not making on.
Alrighty, gentlemen, the House will come back to order. The House will come back to order. Gentlemen, we are now going to jump into Unit 2. Unit 2 is going to take up the bulk of our time here. The bulk of our time. Couple of important things before we jump into Unit 2. Number 1, right? We're going to map out by theme. Okay? So you will see, remember, on your final, there are 5 total themes, 2 of which will show up on the exam. Okay? Our theme number 1 is dehumanization, otherization, and de jure discrimination, also de facto, right? Can someone remind me, what does de jure and de facto mean? De jure, de facto. What do those terms mean? Those terms mean? Arush?
The jure is based on like the law that discriminates people, and de facto is based on like social things.
Good. By fact versus by law, right? By fact or by law. Theme 2 is land rights, right? Theme 3 over there is immigration, assimilation, and integration. Assimilation, integration, and immigration. In the back, we have theme 4, which is resistance, theme 4, resistance, and theme 5, labor and slavery. Okay? Gentlemen, resistance, and then theme 5 is labor and slavery. Labor and slavery. Yes, Ishan. Gentlemen, theme 1. Theme 1. Gentlemen, theme 1 is dehumanization, otherization, and de jure discrimination. Burkett. Ryan.
How many are going to be on the class?
No, it's going to be sorted by themes or by ethnic.
By theme, and then within the theme by ethnic group. Alrighty, gentlemen. 2 quick things before we start this section. I'm going to use color-coded. So each one will have a specific color. In addition to that, gentlemen, please note that we're going to go through this starting from the beginning of Unit 2, so starting with Native Americans. Okay, starting with natives. Okay? Any questions before we start?
Nope.
Alrighty. I want to first start off by connecting our theme of Native Americans, right, or our ethnic group, the first ethnic group we talked about, Native Americans, right, with dehumanization and with land rights, right? Now, here's the deal about Native Americans. First, can someone remind me, right, first contact with the Native Americans. First contact with the Native Americans. Who led that? First contact with natives. There were 2.
Thorbjornson.
There were 2 sort of Viking.
Thorfinn.
Blake. Very good. Right, gentlemen. We had first contact. We had first contact with the Native Americans. Right, when we talked about Thorfinn, Karlsefni, and Thorvald Eriksson. Remember that Karlsefni wanted to trade, but what happened with Eriksson? They wanted to trade. Anyone remember what happened to Erickson, Thorvald Erickson? Beer Verma?
He wanted to do like he was more focused on fighting and eventually.
Very good. It was fighting instead, right? Now, gentlemen, this sets up, right? This sets up perceptions against those who are Native American, right? So let's start off. Let's start off by talking a little bit about these perceptions, right? This is how, first, the Native Americans were otherized, right? So let's start off with perceptions of natives. Someone tell me how natives were perceived. Ryan, how were natives perceived?
Uncivilized.
Uncivilized. What else? Yes, Gio. Savages, absolutely. What else? Zach? Dirty. Couple more. Nico?
Horny.
Yes, they were libidinous or horny.
Oh yeah, Nico.
It's her.
Nico's
What
very
else?
libidinous.
What else? Jonah. Yes, they were outsiders.
Jonah, that was a horrible answer.
Yes, Nicholas. Pagan.
Dang it. Shut up, Nico. This isn't Coach Thurman's meeting.
Nicholas, what does pagan mean?
Reset.
Gentlemen, let's cut the side conversations. Nicholas? Demonic. More specifically, Ian?
They are Catholic or like
Don't believe in God.
They don't believe in what?
God.
Believe in a God.
Isn't it just in one God? In the God?
Is it don't believe in one God?
So what the fuck?
They don't believe in God.
God.
Gentlemen, does anyone know the sort of religion that Native Americans were a part of? Anyone know?
Spiritualization.
Raga. Good. They were spiritual, but what
Animals.
was it called? Gotham? Animism. Very good. Now here's the deal, right? Native Americans were seen as savages, right? They were seen as savages, right? Savages, right? We also talked about Native Americans and their stereotypes. What are some stereotypes that we know come about as a result of this? What are some examples of stereotypes of Native Americans? Lucas Wong?
They're like kind of they're friends with all
Yep.
animals.
They're connected to nature. Arjad? Yes. Everything has a spirit. Everything has a spirit. Arash? Sure. Gentlemen, what other stereotypes do we have about Native Americans? What other stereotypes? Keon? Yep. No writing, no alphabet system, right? Rohit. Yeah, bloodthirsty. Micah? Yeah, cannibals. Lorenzo? Lazy, very good. Right? Now, gentlemen, I want to take a second to connect these stereotypes, this idea, right, connect this idea, gentlemen, right?
There you go.
Gentlemen, I want to connect this idea. Okay. You're welcome.
Dang it, bro.
Gentlemen, I want to connect this idea of laziness to one of the justifications about land rights. What is the justification I am thinking of? Europeans justified taking land by claiming they were lazy. What was the justification here? Justin, was your hand up in the back? Yeah. Right? They had no work ethic. Right? They had no work ethic. And so as a result, right, we start to see Native Americans being viewed, right, as lazy. Right? They were starting to be viewed as lazy. Keon.
I think they also thought that they didn't use their crops to the fullest extent and such didn't deserve as much land because they weren't like overworking.
Right? They weren't farming cash crops. Gentlemen, what are some examples of cash crops? What are some examples of cash crops? We'll go Ty. Tobacco. What else?
High starch.
Anything else? Ivan? Cotton. Right? Nico? Corn was not exactly a cash crop. Right?
Sugar.
Yes, sugarcane. Right, sugarcane. Very good.
Yeah, that was in their application
Now, gentlemen, when we talk about dehumanization, right? When we talk about how these stereotypes are formed, right? We also need to talk a little bit about how they were compared and contrasted, right? These stereotypes, right? Especially the fact that folks were pagan, especially the fact that they were dirty, especially the fact that they were uncivilized, right? They also apply to other ethnic groups. What other ethnic group did these ideas also apply to? What other immigrant groups did these also apply to? I will take.
He's right here.
I will take Liam. Very good. The Irish, right? Right. Any other groups? Lorenzo? Yes. Those who are Irish and those who are black, right? Many of them were viewed as savage, as uncivilized, right? As undeserving of any rights. Now, gentlemen, we learned a little bit, we talked a little bit about stereotypes in the context, right, of Matoaka, otherwise known as who? Pocahontas, right? You don't need to know or remember much about that, but you do need to understand, right, that these stereotypes did result in these, looks, right, that these ideas that the Native Americans were connected to nature, that they had no writing or alphabet system, that they were lazy, right? Keon.
I just want to confirm what's Indigo also have.
Indigo was. Now, gentlemen, Native Americans, right, these stereotypes were applied to two different native tribes. Does anyone know what two native tribes these were applied to? There were two Native American tribes we learned about. Which two? Gabe? Not yet. Alvin? The Powhatans.
John?
And what's the other group? Bye, Bob? There we got the Wampanoags.
This one's better up here.
Gentlemen, can someone tell me, let's start off with the Powhatans. What did the Powhatans do? What were they like? Can someone give me a couple things about the Powhatans? Raghav?
They grew corn,
Yes.
and they had like a advanced like system where they had different like villages.
Very good. Right, they had a complex village system. They grew corn. They had a numbering system. Eduardo?
I forgot, but they don't want them to use like the three systems.
Ooh, that was the Wampanoags. Very good. We've got the three sisters, right? We've got corn. Does anyone remember the other two? Corn, two others. BK?
Wheat.
Not wheat.
Bro. Squash.
Squash. And Michael? Beans. Right. So, gentlemen, the three sisters, we have the Powhatans, right? We also know that the Powhatans had a calendar, right, that revolved around corn, right? In addition, gentlemen, right, the Wampanoags, right, they had a complex, the Wampanoags had a very complex sort of political representation system, right? They would have people coming in representing different parts of a tribe. They also, gentlemen, in addition to political representation, right, they had a task system that each person has a specific job to do, right? So, for example, right, if Advit here is really good at bows and arrows, he's going to be in charge of making them, right? Jacob here is in charge of picking the squash, so on and so forth. Now, gentlemen, I want to take a second and I want to transition into talking a little bit about these land rights, right? Let's start down in Virginia. There were a couple justifications.
Yeah.
Are we going theme by theme, or are we just like switching in
I think we're doing theme by theme for each character.
Okay.
Gentlemen, and yep, folks, if you haven't noticed, we're color coding, right? So you can see the different color codes, right? So let's jump over to number 2, to theme number 2, land rights, right? So let's talk a little bit about justifications used to take native lands. First, we've got no cash crops, right? People were not planting tobacco, not planting cotton, not planting sugarcane, right? Any other justification? There's one big one.
Wait. Skin color.
Yes, Josh. Bingo.
Yes, Josh.
Right? Blood on the soil. Does anyone remember what event triggers this justification? What event triggers this? Bobby. Very good. Jamestown Massacre. Now, gentlemen, natives also bled on the soil. Why doesn't their blood count? Dominic? Not human. Right? Not human. Their blood doesn't count. They're not human. Right? Now, keep in mind, gentlemen, these tensions grow. Right? Tensions grow to cause this, right? Right? We see tensions grow between the natives and the natives and the colonizers, right? The English, right? These tensions begin to grow, right? The English begin to take more of their land as their population expands, right? Right.
Tensions grow. English take the land. How am I supposed to go?
Now, gentlemen, I want us to compare and contrast a little bit, right? These ideas between Native Americans
And everything. Adrian.
How do the natives view the land versus Europeans? Let's start off with Native Americans. Gentlemen, how did the natives view the land? Natives, how did they view the land? Move on. Yep, land is sacred. How else? Christian.
Everything in it had a life.
Yep.
Everything had a spirit, life. Tomato, tomato.
Very good. There's a spiritual connection. Zach?
That it was abundant and very resourceful.
What does that say? Resources.
Right? And gentlemen, can one own the land? Yes or no?
No.
No. Gotham.
Yeah, they have to share. It's like a communal society where they share the land. Can't own it.
They share the land. Right? Now, gentlemen, what about Europeans? How did they view the land? How did the Europeans view the land? Joaquin? Yeah. They want to profit off of it. Ovid?
Yeah.
Good. Justin, you had your hand up. Say profit. Raghav? Yep. Very good. Blood on the soil. Arash. Very good. It's a commodity that can and should be exploited. Kian.
Any one person can own land.
Yep.
And something that should be sold and traded or taken.
Right? Very good. They can own it. They can sell it. Right? Very good. Now, gentlemen, right? In addition to these three, there's also one more justification about taking land. Anyone know which one I am thinking of or which one I'm talking about? Has to do with a specific disease, shall we say. Tommy? Very good. Gentlemen, smallpox was sent by God. Why? To kill off the Native Americans. Smallpox sent by God to kill the natives. Now, gentlemen, that's not to say that there wasn't resistance. There wasn't resistance. I want to scoot on back over to theme number 4 in the back. Just watch out, gentlemen. Ishan, I'm going to put this right here. Okay. Gentlemen, I want to talk a little bit about resistance. Gentlemen, Native Americans did not just take this sitting down. They resisted. Can someone tell me there were 2 wars that were fought? 2 wars that were fought. 2 wars that were fought. Sit on. Sorry. Very good. The Pequot War. What is the other war that was fought? Ben. Not James. Ooh, close. There was a Pequot War, and then there was one other war. What was the other war? Go ahead. King Philip. Right? Gentlemen, does anyone remember what happened as an aftermath as a result of both of these wars? King Philip's War, the Pequot War, both ended up with a similar result. I'm just going to write this up here. Both end up resulting in what? What happens? I should. There are huge casualties, gentlemen. At the end of the day, right? Native losses, right? Increased, right, Zach?
It kind of showed how like they were weak because his head got chopped off.
Very good. King Philip was executed, right? It resulted in the taking gentlemen, of native land. Gentlemen, so at the end of the day, King Philip's War, the Pequot War, ended up with the taking of land. Keon. Gentlemen, this results in the Pequot being viewed and the King Philip's, right, the Wampanoags being viewed as demonic, right, as devilish. Now, gentlemen, jumping back up to land rights.
I just need to know Native Americans.
I need to know everything.
Everything else after that is easy. They're all like connected. What?
Gentlemen, we also, gentlemen, we also saw another justification to try and take native land. This one came from Thomas Jefferson. Does anyone remember what he wrote? Does anyone remember what he wrote? Ruhan?
No way. How do you lose your vote like that?
1803 confidential message.
You lost it. Sorry. Sit down, bro. Watch out. The camera's right here. Move. Sit down like me. No, we all have to get the. Oh, I gave
Gentlemen.
you a seat for a second.
Gentlemen, there were two methods of taking Native American land under the confidential message to Congress. What was it? What were they? Arush?
They like set up banks and they just like put their land.
Good. They would set up shops, right? They would then get them hooked on goods, right? And once they bought and got hooked on these goods, what would happen to those prices?
Increase.
Jack them up, right? After they jack up the prices, gentlemen, right? If you can't pay for something, you have to take out a what? And gentlemen, if you have to take out a loan, what do you have to put down as collateral?
Land.
And gentlemen, if you can't pay back that loan, they take your right.
Yeah.
Does anyone remember the second method? Anyone remember the second method? Yeah. Beer? Good. Method number 2 was to become farmers, not hunters. Right? If you farmed, you would need less land. Right? If you farmed, you would need less land.
Wait, farmers not hunters?
Yes, Ayushman.
I thought like Jefferson's like attitude in the message was that like you would be able to accept Native Americans if they like became white and actually assimilated into this culture. But like they didn't assimilate that. They were
Very good. This was one method of assimilating, becoming farmers. Okay. Gentlemen, I want to jump over to Native American removal and assimilation. Right? Keep in mind, right? This idea that natives were savages were something that was also held not only by Jefferson, but by our nation's 7th president. Anyone remember?
Donald Trump.
Andrew Jackson.
Yeah. Funny guy.
Wait, we're going to female 3 now?
Gentlemen.
Taking pictures too.
Gentlemen, keep in mind, right? Andrew Jackson was a hero of the Indian Wars, right?
Give me one chip. Are we back to 1?
Gentlemen, Andrew Jackson really wanted to undermine native what? Starts with an S. He wanted to undermine native what? It starts with an S. An S.
What is it?
Nico? Yes.
Oh, you're good.
Right? Andrew Jackson wanted to undermine native sovereignty. Can someone tell me, what does it mean to be sovereign? What does it mean to be sovereign? Kishan, what's it mean to be sovereign?
You're like self-governing.
Yeah. Sovereignty is self-governing.
Is it Kishan or Kishan?
Self-governing. Right? Now, what were some laws that get passed as a means to undermine native sovereignty? What are some laws that get passed that undermine native sovereignty? Lorenzo. Ah, yes, very good. Gentlemen, let's talk a little bit. Gentlemen, I want to talk a little bit about this idea of undermining native sovereignty, right? There were laws that were passed to remove Native Americans from their land, right? One of which was the Native Removal Act, or sorry, the Indian Removal Act, sorry, of 1830. Can someone tell me what the Indian Removal Act of 1830 said? What did the Indian Removal Act of 1830 say? Eduardo?
That any tribe, I want to be told, east to Mississippi to the west.
Very good. Native tribes must move west of the Mississippi. Gentlemen, there were 5 tribes that this affected. 5 tribes. Can someone name these 5 tribes? 5 tribes that were affected.
Raise your hand.
5 tribes. Ojas, give me one of them.
Creole.
Yes.
Talk that same like Cherokee Creole. Stop.
Who else? Who else? Ian?
Seminole.
Oh wow. Yeah, this is why he didn't call on you, Ian. This is why he didn't call on you.
One time he called on you. Good job, bro. Good job.
That's because you were proud of
3 more. I will take BK.
The Creoles.
Creoles. Wait, the Creoles. Not the Creoles.
What?
Hey, sorry, I meant Cherokee. I meant Cherokee, bro. Marlo, you said the wrong answer.
2 more. Gio? 2 more. Beer? Yep. What's number 5? Ryan? Yes.
Yes.
Very good. The Creeks.
Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah, that's a funny guy back there.
Now, gentlemen, the natives did actually have some support, right? A Supreme Court case ruled in favor of them. Anyone remember the name of this Supreme Court case?
That Supreme Court case that ruled in favor of the natives.
Supreme Court case. There's a Supreme Court case that ruled in favor of them. Kishan? Yep, Cherokee Nation versus Georgia.
It's red.
Right? Cherokee Nation versus Georgia said what? What did Cherokee Nation versus Georgia say? Giancarlo.
It's basically that like the state needed to adhere to the sovereignty of the natives.
Yep.
Wait, Cherokee versus Great America?
Georgia.
Oh, Georgia.
Hey,
Great America.
good enough.
Where would you say Great America?
Cherokee versus Great America. Oh, it's hot as hell.
Georgia cannot pass any laws to undermine native sovereignty. Right? Georgia cannot pass any laws to undermine native sovereignty. But gentlemen, they moved ahead anyway. Let's focus, gentlemen, a little bit on the Choctaw. The Choctaw. Gentlemen, there was a treaty that affected the Choctaw. What was it called? Dancing Rabbit Creek. Dancing Rabbit Creek. Right?
He was on his daily walk. Why are you flexing, bro?
The Treaty of Dancing Rabbit Creek. Can someone tell me, what did the Treaty of Dancing Rabbit Creek promise? There were 2 options here.
Oh, wait.
2 options.
$5 million.
No, I thought it was.
Stanley?
They leave the land. They get $5 million.
Yeah.
It's actually 3.2 million.
Not necessarily.
$3.2 million. And then if they stay there,
Someone tell me, what did the Treaty of Dancing Rabbit Creek say?
Raise your hand. I'll let someone else have it. John Clark, can you
Kavi.
put your hands up?
Wow.
Very good.
You think that's funny or something?
This is mine. This is my
Bye, Ben. Is Ben done keeping up?
Oh, and then when they applied for the land grant, they would be denied.
That's gonna be my charger, bro.
Yes, everyone's leaving.
Yes.
Goodbye, everybody.
Gentlemen, gentlemen,
My chairs.
you can talk all you want, right? You can talk all you want, but keep in mind, right, that if I'm mentioning important things, you might want to pay attention. Remember, the Treaty of Dancing Rabbit Creek gave folks two options. They could either stay on the land, apply for land grants, or they could move west. Now, what would happen, gentlemen, if you applied for land grants? Thomas?
Oh,
They would be denied, right?
Not quite.
They have to go to
Not
court.
quite.
They got
And it's a lot of money.
Dominic?
Oh.
Bingo. If they apply for land grants, you get method one. Apply for loans, right? And then you basically take out a loan, put your land down as collateral, right? Then they take the land, right? Now, gentlemen, the Choctaw were affected by the Treaty of Dancing Rabbit Creek. But the Cherokee were affected by the Treaty of New Echota.
you do that again. Oh, yeah.
Damn, time goes fast when you're having
It
fun.
hasn't even been. Yeah, we're having a lot of fun. That's all.
We have John Ridge and John Ross, right? Remember, the Cherokee are made up of like 14 different tribal leaders. The U.S. government was like, hey, we just need to find one person that's willing to sell out their land, right?
Treaty of New.
John Ross wants to stay,
I knew it was 5 million.
right? John Ridge,
Treaty of New what? Yeah.
Does that Treaty of New Echota?
Yep.
Legendary pool.
What?
Yeah.
New Echota, Echota, E-C-H-O-T-A, New Echota.
Rising from the ashes.
Right? Gentlemen, John Ridge is okay with moving. So he signs away their entire land rights. Right?
5 million. Wait, John Ridge?
Yep.
Okay with this?
John Ridge is okay with it. John Ross wants to stay on the land.
Isn't it like for $5 million or something?
About 3.25 million.
So you were wrong.
How much is that today?
Gentlemen, Nico. Gentlemen, here's the thing about the Treaty of New Echota, and here's the thing about the Treaty of Dancing Rabbit Creek. Both of these sent the natives on a journey.
To the west.
A journey to the west. What was that called?
Oh, really?
What was that called? Eduardo? The Trail of Tears. Right?
Oh, this is like so. I have like 4 pages already. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Hey, this guy said only 4.
Gentlemen, what are some things that happened on the Trail of Tears?
You get used to it after a while.
He's only double facing it.
What are some things that happened during the Trail of Tears?
Why would you
Well, I actually have good notes.
Stanley?
Why? You just send me the notes.
A lot of people
Oh,
died.
no.
Yep.
It was like too tiring.
Because you want to give me.
I got you.
Yeah. Oh, John Clark, I gave you the sales.
Want me to give you my notes? I got it.
Deaths, right? Lots of cold people. It was very cold, right? People died, Nico? Yeah, right? Harsh weathers, right? And in the land out west, gentlemen, where did they go? Where did they go? What modern day state did they go to?
Sweet home Oklahoma.
Oklahoma.
Do you know that Oklahoma State's coming here though? For wrestling today?
Mhm.
Yeah, they're here.
Right? They went to Oklahoma. Gentlemen, what was the land that they were given? What was that called? Starts with an R.
Mr. Luke, I'll give you 2 chocolate bars.
Lucas Wong. Reservations. Right?
What? 2 chocolate bars. You really want a chocolate bar?
Very good. Now, gentlemen, I want to transition back over to theme number 4, to resistance.
Yeah, it's Daniel Bacon. Nathaniel Bacon. Daniel Bacon.
Daniel Bacon.
That was actually
Dominic?
not even there.
It was resistance.
Yeah.
Running American.
Wait,
We've got a lot to get through.
yes. Where? We're only doing Americans right now. No, you just need to know the
Gentlemen, we're going to jump over here to the back. We're going to
What's
talk
up,
a
YouTube?
little bit more about
Favorite
resistance.
YouTuber right here?
We're going to talk a little bit more about resistance. Gentlemen, one of the ways that they resisted, right, was by a little dance. What is the name of this dance? Xavier? Gentlemen, what is the point of a ghost dance? What's the point of a ghost dance? Arjan?
To bring back the bison.
Very good. To bring back the bison. Ryan?
Streaming this? Yeah, what? It's streaming this?
Yeah, you literally came
Keon?
Wait, like, up?
Correct. They do not give them the money. Gentlemen, the ghost dance was an attempt to bring back the bison. Now, gentlemen, question for you. Why were the bison dying in the first place? You go. Why would they kill them? Gentlemen, if you want to talk, you can go outside. Gentlemen, they want to get rid of natives and the food supply, right? What's another reason why the bison were dying? What was trying to spread? What was trying to go westward? What was trying to go westward? Are you? Railroads. Rail expansion out west. Gentlemen, Buffalo, right? Buffalo, unfortunately, got to the point where as people were trying to expand railroads westward, the buffalo got in the way, which is why they were killed. There was a huge, right, push to try to move westward as a result. Arash. Gentlemen, the tribe that relied on bison were both the Pawnee and the Sioux. The Pawnee and the Sioux tribe, right? Now, here's the thing. There was a specific law. That really allows for rail expansion out west. Does anyone remember the name of this law? There was a law that allowed for rail expansion out west. It was the IAA. What does the IAA stand for? IAA. Thomas?
Indian Appropriation.
Nico?
The 1871 Indian Appropriation Act.
Very good. The Indian Appropriation Act, right? Gentlemen, the Indian Appropriation Act said what? What did the Indian Appropriation Act say? Veer?
Basically, removed all Indian sovereignty. No Indian tribe was like they were all subject.
Very good. The Indian Appropriation Act removed native sovereignty. Ryan? Very good. Very good. Gentlemen, we also see another method of resistance, right? Right? The ghost dance is connected, right, to a man named Sitting Bull. Right? A man named Sitting Bull. Gentlemen, does anyone remember there was a massacre at Sitting Bull? What happened as a result of this massacre? There was a massacre. What was the name of this massacre? Arya. Yes, the massacre at Wounded Knee. There's a huge massacre at Wounded Knee, right? With Chief Sitting Bull, right? During this time as well, we start to see different schools begin to pop up. Different schools begin to pop up. Does anyone remember the name of these specific schools? What type of schools were they? Diego, is that a hand in the back? Ruhan? Yes, boarding schools, right? Because they were savages, the natives were put in boarding schools. Gentlemen, what happened in these boarding schools? Gentlemen, what happened in these boarding schools? Pierce. Good. What else? Ty?
They would often be abused.
Yep. Right, they would be abused physically.
What?
Ian?
They tried to wash away the Indian.
Yep. Rid the Indian, right? Micah. Yep. Right, no language. Right, Arjan. Yep, no language, no clothing. Nico. Yep, at one point they did, right? Gentlemen, all of this sets up, right? Another form of native resistance, otherwise known as AIM. Does anyone remember what AIM stands for? AIM. AIM. We have AIM. What does AIM stand for?
American Indian Movement.
Kish.
American Indian Movement.
Very good. AIM, gentlemen, is the American Indian Movement. American Indian Movement. Josh, do you mind if you toss me a black pen? Gentlemen, what does AIM want? What does AIM want?
They want their land back.
They want their land back? What else do they want?
They want like treaties to be recognized.
Treaties to be recognized? Gentlemen, what about sovereignty? What about sovereignty? Raghav? Yes. Treaties. Treaties. Gentlemen, I now want to transition to talking a little bit about labor and slavery.
Wait, there's no way.
Gentlemen, if you want to talk again, you can move outside. Okay? We've got about an hour 45 left. We're going to power through it. Let's start by talking a little bit about African Americans. First of all, just like those who are Native Americans, those who are black were also viewed as savage and dirty. Right? Gentlemen, we also know that when the first black slaves came over to the United States, was slavery legal? Were there laws in place? Yes or no? No. It was de facto. Right? In 1619. In 1619, there was no laws about slavery. Right? Now, gentlemen, we know that slavery, a form of slavery, still existed. A form of slavery still existed. It was de facto. Gentlemen, what was that form of de facto slavery called? Dominic? Yes. Indentured servitude. Gentlemen, can someone tell me what happens in indentured servitude? Pierce? Yes. Right? You would come to U.S., work 7 years, right, to earn freedom. Now, that wasn't the only thing you earned, though. In addition to earning your freedom, you would also get a little bit of what? Land. Right? So you would get a little bit of land. You would get a little bit of freedom after your 7 years of time was over. But here's the problem. We know that those who are white indentured servants, those who are black indentured servants, treated very differently.
Diego, move your head out of the way.
Gentlemen, can someone tell me, in terms of black versus white indentured servants, how were they treated? How were they treated? Oliver. That's right. Harsher punishments. What else? Arjan?
I think if they're trying to escape, they have to like be indentured for life.
Yep. Right? Those who are white indentured servants would have a few years added to time of servitude. Right? White indentured servants would have a few years added. Black indentured servants would serve for life. Right? Mr. Verma.
The white ones could own arms, black. The white indentured servants could own arms, the black indentured servants were prohibited.
Very good. Those who are white could own weapons. Right? Stanley.
Well, I was gonna say that.
Got it. Right? So black indentured servants could not own weapons. They could not own arms. Right? Now, gentlemen, we see, right, growing discontent. Why? We see people piss the hell off. Why? We see people pissed off. Why? Ayushman.
Because now like the white people like white indentured servants can like do like they don't like if there's like it like has to do with arms. With yes and no.
Gentlemen, for white versus black indentured servants, white and black indentured servants, right? At the end of the day, they started getting really pissed off at the government. Why? Why were black indentured and white indentured servants really mad at the government? Ian?
Wait, no, I was just saying.
Okay. Oh, Joss.
They were like even if they got free, they weren't really given much land, and like they were seemingly never gonna be freed. And the land they were given was like attacked by Indians a lot, and it wasn't defended by the government, so they just lose it anyways and not make the profit.
Very good. Indentured servants were not given land or given bad land, right, after their years of servitude, right? So either not given land or given really bad or poor land, right? With this growing discontent, gentlemen, this leads to a specific rebellion. Does anyone remember the name of this rebellion? It's a very delicious rebellion. Aaron? Yep. Gentlemen, Bacon's Rebellion. Can someone tell me what on earth happened in Bacon's Rebellion?
Let me do it.
What happens during Bacon?
Oh, they burned Jamestown.
Yep, they burned Jamestown. What else happens during Bacon's Rebellion? John?
I think at the near the tail end of it, both black and white indentured servants are like on one side of the river, and then like I think it was the mayor of Jamestown.
It was a captain.
Yeah, they brokered peace by saying like if everybody puts their weapons down, like, they'll be like water in their servants. But when they didn't put their weapons down, they were captured.
Gentlemen, there is a big effect that happens as a result of Bacon's Rebellion, right? There are a few effects that end up happening. The first effect, gentlemen, is a shift. We see a hierarchy shift, right? It used to be what? It used to be 2 layers. Which 2 layers were there? It was only based on class. It was only based on class. Nihar?
I'll just say white
Dave?
Landowners and the indentured servants.
Yes, those who are rich and those who are poor. Right? Rich landowners poor indentured servants. That changes, gentlemen, to now being based on race and class. Race and class. Does someone remember what is it based on? Race and class. So who's at the top? Ruhan? Yep. White landowners. Who's at the bottom, gentlemen? Black slaves. And who is in the middle?
Indentured servant.
Poor whites. Right? Those who are poor, those who are white. Now here's the deal. Here's the deal. Why did they end up relying more on these black indentured servants? Why is that? Why is that? Why do they rely more on black indentured servants? Aaron?
Because they felt like they could trust white ones after they were
Yep. Whites were armed. But were black indentured servants allowed to be armed?
No.
No. Right? They cannot be armed, right? Very good. Now, gentlemen, we learned a little bit about examples of how of different slave laws. Does anyone remember any example of slave laws? Right, we learned about some examples of Virginia slave laws. Anyone remember what are some examples of Virginia slave laws? Yep, Virginia slave laws. Raghav?
The one drop rule.
Yep.
Oh, what a bar.
What else? Turho? Yeah, owners can kill slaves. Why?
Because their property.
Yeah, they're property. They're not people. What else? Brandon?
Christianity wouldn't save them.
Good. Religion can't save you. There is one other one. Kishan?
If your mom was at least one blood of, if she had black blood, yeah, one drop rule. She was black.
Hey, next one.
But gentlemen, does anyone remember the Latin term?
Oh.
Yo, are you looking at this class too?
Ayushman? No?
You should call it
Veer?
hardest sequitur.
Good. Hardest sequitur. Cruz, did you have something? About, oh, yeah. Religion can't save you, right? Ojas?
Wasn't there one like if the slave escaped and then came back on top of the added like indentured servitude, you would also like whip them?
Yes. Gentlemen, you can also punish them physically, right? Very good. Gentlemen, I want to transition to talking a little bit about slaves, but talking a little bit about how slaves were transported here to the United States. What was that journey called? Middle Passage, right? So we see slaves coming over on the Middle Passage. Can someone tell me what was life like during the Middle Passage? What was life like in the Middle Passage? Ty?
They were all compacted into little small spaces. And chained.
They were chained. What else? Kitchen.
They weren't allowed to leave to use the restroom, so they had to use the restroom next to them.
Very good. No restrooms.
That's me, bro.
There was a hand. Micah. Zach.
It was hot.
Yes. Just like here. Arash. Very good. Micah.
There was like more slaves in the ship. Yeah, like they were not.
Very good. More slaves, more profit. Arush. Yep, dead overboard, right? Gentlemen, we also learned during this time about a cycle. A cycle. A, shall we say, triangle with the Atlantic slave trade. Gentlemen, can someone tell me what are the edges of the triangle? What regions, what land are we talking about here? Casper?
I know what the cycle is. I don't know the land.
Wow.
I think I know. Oh, I know this. Europe, America, and Africa.
Yes.
It's hot.
Now he's dying.
Yo, what the hell? Yo.
Gentlemen, again, if you want to talk, you can go outside. Gentlemen, Europe, Africa, USA, and Caribbean. Here is the deal. Africa trades what to the United States and the Caribbean? There's only one thing. Slaves. Right? Now, in the Caribbean, the slaves do what? They grow what? Sugar. Right? That sugar from the Caribbean is sent to the United States where they melt it down to make what? Molasses. Right? Right? Now they send the molasses to Europe where they put it and they use it to brew what? Rum. Rum is an alcoholic drink that then gets sent down to Africa to be traded for more what? Slaves. So we see this revolving cycle, right? We see this revolving cycle, right? Very good. Gentlemen, the last thing I want to talk about is a little bit going back to Thomas Jefferson, right? The ironies that Thomas Jefferson would have, right? So Thomas Jefferson, right, owned slaves himself, right? It's a duality of Jefferson. He believed that at the end of the day, right, slaves are inferior. But at the same time, he also believed in the Declaration of Independence, right? That all men are created equal, right? Had unalienable rights, right? Does anyone remember the name of a slave that he owns? What is the name of a slave that he owns? Giancarlo? Yes, Sally Hemings, right?
All right, bro.
Very good. Gentlemen, I want to transition back now up to theme number 1. Excuse me, sorry. Now, gentlemen, I want to transition into talking a little bit about theme number 1. I want to talk a little bit about African Americans and segregation and slavery, right? I want to talk a little bit about how, at the end of the day, right, slavery was institutionalized, right? After the U.S. Civil War, right, we start to see 13, 14, and 15th Amendments come into play, right? So to right the wrongs of slavery, gentlemen, we passed the Reconstruction Amendments. The Reconstruction Amendments. We have the 13th, the 14th, and the 15th. Gentlemen, can someone tell me, what did the 13th Amendment say? Number 13. Arash? No, 13th was not the right to vote. That was the 15th. Very good. 13th abolished slavery. What did the 14th Amendment say? There were two things the 14th Amendment promised. Lorenzo?
Like a birthright citizenship.
Good.
And the equal protection of work.
Close. Equal protection what? Clause. Right? The equal protection clause. Right? Yes. 14th Amendment was citizenship, birthright citizenship, and equal protection clause. Everyone must be equally protected under the law. Kian?
So, birthright citizenship is also useful this way.
Though the Supreme Court just heard oral argument on that.
And are all of these going to be taken pictures of, or is it only the
All of them. All of them. We'll move through as fast as we can. Gentlemen, for African Americans, even though they had the Reconstruction Amendments, was it all good? Was like no discrimination existed anymore? Yes or no? No. Gentlemen, what was an example of discrimination in the South that existed? Christian. Yes, the KKK. What did the KKK do?
They would hunt down African Americans and lynch them.
Yes. KKK and lynching. Right? Gentlemen, the KKK and lynching. What else would exist in the South? It starts with an S. Gabe?
Segregation.
Yes, segregation.
And the Jim Crow law.
And Jim Crow. Gentlemen, what else? There's one other thing that starts with an S. Ishan. What is sharecropping?
So, sharecropping was basically like, for African Americans, like, couldn't get land, they would like work at people's farms. And so then the farmers, so then the plantation owners took crops from them, so that, a portion of their crops for them to farm on their land.
Very good. Gentlemen, sharecropping is when African Americans who are now freed go and farm on someone's land because they have nowhere else to go. And so as a result, they're required to pay a share of the crop to their former masters in exchange for staying on the land. Now, gentlemen, what would the master do with the share of a crop? What are they going to do with it? Jack it up, increase it, right? Very good. Gentlemen, we also have something called black codes. Does anyone remember what black codes were? Raghav?
There were like laws in certain states that tried to undo the emancipation proclamation. So like one example would be that like African Americans couldn't own land in they couldn't own land in like urban areas. They don't be able to lease it, and it's harder for them to own.
Very good. Black codes, gentlemen, are Jim Crow laws before segregation was legal. Now, gentlemen, what Supreme Court case made segregation legal? Not Dred Scott. Gio? Plessy versus Ferguson. Right? Plessy versus Ferguson said segregation was legal. Very good. Now, gentlemen, that results, all of this results in a massive migratory movement. Right? Does anyone know, for Black Americans, what this is called? Giancarlo.
Harlem Renaissance.
Nope. This move up north. Rohit. Yes, the Great Migration. Segregation was legal. Now, gentlemen.
Hey, everyone be quiet, yeah?
The Great Migration, right, led African Americans up north. What was in the north for them?
Freedom. Oh yeah, better job opportunities.
Better jobs.
I remember it was aging.
There were factory jobs. What else? Zach?
They were offered like freedom, right? Or better living conditions. Something like that.
Good. What else? Beer?
I guess the racism wasn't as hard.
Yeah. Not as harsh with racism. Gabe?
It was more systemic racism rather than social racism.
Yep.
Bro, why is everyone sick, bro?
Again, gentlemen, if you want to talk, you can go outside. Okay? Now here's the problem. Just because there were better opportunities, again, did racism go away? No. There was a big incident. Right? There was a big incident in 1919. Does anyone remember the name of this big incident? Ty? Nope. Bye, Bob? Yes. In 1919, we had the Chicago race riots. Right? The quote, Red Summer of 1919. Right? The Red Summer. This was when we saw a bunch of race riots. People were pissed the hell off. Right? We also, gentlemen, saw African Americans in the North struggle when neighborhoods would ban them from coming in and moving. Does anyone remember what this was called? This practice of drawing these racial lines.
Red line.
Cruz? Redlining. Right? Right? Now, gentlemen, I will say, we still have resistance. And I want to transition us into talking about that resistance. So, gentlemen, let's move again to the back of the board and talk a little bit about theme number 4. Theme number 4 is resistance. Watch out. Gentlemen, theme number 4 is all about resistance. African Americans resisted. Now, one of the ways they resisted was by coming up with culture, right? Gentlemen, there was a revival of black culture. Does anyone remember what this was called up north? A revival of black culture. What was this called up in the north? Dominic? Yes, the Harlem Renaissance. What were some things in the Harlem Renaissance, gentlemen? Arush? Jazz. What else? What else do we have? Arjan? Yeah. Poetry. Ojas.
The blues?
The blues. Right? Ruhan? Beer.
Like literature and art in general.
Very good. Literature and art, right? Right, we saw those paintings by Aaron Douglas, right? We also, gentlemen, saw resistance against Jim Crow. Now, gentlemen, there were two people in charge of fighting against Jim Crow, right? But they had two very different ideologies. Who are these two people? Two people. Nihar. Malcolm X is one of them. And the Black Panthers. Who is the other one? Ishan? MLK Jr. And does anyone remember the organization that MLK starts? MLK and Turho? SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC. Now, can someone tell me what is the difference between these two? What is the difference between these two groups? Brandon.
I think MLK believed in more of a peaceful kind of protest, change it by not violence.
Very good. Non-violent protest. As compared to what for Malcolm X and the Black Panthers? Malcolm X and the Black Panthers, they fought for a more what, Arya? Yeah, right. An active resistance. Fight back. Right? Now, gentlemen, in fighting back, right? MLK fought for peaceful protests. What are some examples of peaceful protests that happened under MLK and SNCC? Christian?
Boycotts.
Yeah.
For buses.
Yep. Bus boycotts. What else? Arash? Marches. March on Washington. Lorenzo.
I heard it's called bar sittings or whatever.
Yeah, just sit-ins. Sit-ins, right? They would literally sit there and refuse to move, right? There was also a voting rights march. In Selma, right? And gentlemen, does anyone remember the Freedom Riders? People that were on the bus? Yeah, and when the bus crossed state lines, right, they would have to, right, they would have to move to the back, but they refused to, right? Very good.
Okay. And then the KK would burn them.
Very good. The KK would bomb the buses. Gentlemen, Nico? The Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. Now, gentlemen, one other thing here. We also learned about, right? We learned about African Americans fighting in World War II. Right? Does anyone remember the name of the resistance movement where they fought against segregation at home? Alvin? Very good. The Double V campaign. Alvin, what did the Double V campaign stand for? Victory against fascism abroad. Victory against segregation at home. Right? They fought against segregation. Yes, Rodrigo.
Didn't they also use it to like assimilate into like American?
Very good. Very good. Yes, Raghav.
For the double V campaign, the individual groups, Tuskegee Airmen, the postal people, and what was like the third group, like the numbers.
Gentlemen, we've got the Tuskegee Airmen. We've got the 761st Battalion, which were all about tanks, right? All about tanks, right? We had the 6,888. It was the Central Postal Directory. Unit, right? All of these folks fought for better rights, fought for integration in the military. Gentlemen, in 1964, we see the passage of the Civil Rights Act, which gets rid, the Civil Rights Act, right, allows for, creates, right, and bans discrimination based on race. No more discrimination based on race. 1964. Burkett. A battalion. There were Air Force pilots that bombed certain areas.
And then what did the Civil Rights Act do?
It banned discrimination based on race. Gentlemen, it is time to come back up to the top. It is time, gentlemen, to talk about land rights. Gentlemen, we're going to transition to Mexican Americans. Gentlemen, Mexican Americans, the U.S. wants to expand west. What is this called? Manifest Destiny, right?
You want me to send you the border then?
Now, gentlemen, Manifest Destiny, right, is this God-given right to move west, right? Now, here's the deal about Mexican Americans, gentlemen, right? Here's the thing about Mexican Americans, gentlemen, right? America escalates tensions, right? Gentlemen, does anyone remember why we want to move out west? We want to spread what westward? Slavery, right? We want to spread slavery out west. right? We also offer to buy Tejas, right? Gentlemen, how does Mexico respond?
No.
Nuh-uh. They shut down the border. They ban slavery. Right? America escalates. Now, gentlemen, just like the Jamestown Massacre, right? Mexico has its own similar justification. Does anyone remember what is this similar justification? Someone's blood is spilled on the soil. In what battle was the blood spilled on the soil? Arush? Yes, the Alamo. Right? Remember the Alamo. Right? American blood now spilled on the soil. This then results in American revenge. Does anyone remember who was the president at the time? Who was the president? Veer? Yes, President Polk. Sends troops to the border, right? President Polk sends troops to the border, right? We see that there is a huge border dispute. Outside, bro. Gentlemen, there's a huge border dispute. In fact, gentlemen, it is over 2 rivers. What 2 rivers? Nope, not the Euphrates and the Tigris River. Kavi? Very good. The Rio Grande. And what's the other? Raghav? The Nueces. The Nueces. Right? And so, gentlemen, America claims Rio Grande is a southern border. Mexico says it's the Nueces. So which one is it? Well, President Polk sends troops to the border. There's a little skirmish. And so now there is full-fledged war. Right? Now everything goes to crap. We are starting a war. Now, gentlemen, James Polk, right, blames who for the conflict? Mexico, right? He blames Mexico for the conflict, right? They started it. Now, gentlemen, what I want to do now is I want us to talk a little bit. We're going to go to theme 1. We're going to talk a little bit about how Mexicans were treated like foreigners in their own land. Right? To do that, we have to talk a little bit about California. Right? The taking of Tejas, right? Is Tejas peaceful or violent? Violent. But was the taking of California peaceful or violent? Peaceful. Right? Now, gentlemen, right? Gentlemen, we annex the land. Right? What does annexing mean?
Take control of.
It's nice to meet you.
Right? And we establish 2 republics. What 2 republics do we establish? Let's start with Tejas. What republic do we establish?
The Lone Star State.
California. What republic do we establish? Bear Flag Republic.
All right, bro. Late to the party.
Actually,
I think early March.
oh my god.
Gentlemen,
Only 2 months away. Don't worry, guys.
gentlemen, Bear Flag
Shut up.
Republic,
Shut up.
right? Bear Flag Republic is formed, right? We start to see the establishment of a treaty. Well, Mexico's about to lose the war. What treaty gets established, gentlemen? What treaty gets established?
Oh, Mr. Lou. Mr. Lou. Mr. Lou.
Aaron? Very good. The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo.
Wait, what's the one?
Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. Now, here's the problem, gentlemen. The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo's promises equal rights. And it used to contain an article. What article did it used to contain? Lorenzo? Very good.
What was the war called again?
The Mexican-American War. Right? Article 10. Gentlemen, what did Article 10 say? Stanley.
Was it like that the Mexicans could keep the land they owned?
Yes. Land rights protected. What happens to Article 10? They yeet it out. They remove it. What does it get replaced with, gentlemen? What does it get replaced with? Ayushman?
They have to like prove that they have the land with
Close. Not quite. Fear?
It sort of just becomes a promise of them saying, well, I will promise to be a certain and respect it, but like, there's nothing.
Very good. It becomes a de facto promise. A de facto promise, it becomes replaced by the statement protocol. A de facto promise. We're going to promise not to take your land, right? Is that actually true? No. Gentlemen, it is time to move to theme number 1.
Dude, I'm on the stream.
Gentlemen, Mexican Americans, how are they treated like foreigners in their own land? Can someone give me some examples? Aria. Foreign miners tax. What did it say? Very good. Not a citizen, had to pay a tax. What else? Both. Both. Zach, both. Ojas. The grease rack. What did the grease rack say?
That also Mexican defense, like people that are like vagabonds are not allowed. Like Mexicans are described as vagabonds.
Yeah. No homeless. No homeless. Go ahead.
For the foreign miners, is it taxed on the actual profits of the?
Just for working.
Nope. Just for even existing. Right? Gentlemen, what types of jobs would Mexican Americans work? What color?
White.
Blue.
Blue, bro. Dude, I know you speak wrong. Jump work?
Gentlemen, blue collar work. Right? Blue collar work. They would also, gentlemen, have land commissions. Right? Land commissions that would screw them over. You had to prove. You had to prove that you own the land. Right? And it was very hard for them to do so. Right? We also see We also see a new taxation system. Anyone remember how the land was taxed?
Rancheros got taxed more.
Anyone remember how the land was taxed? Gabe?
Rancheros were taxed more.
Not quite. Covey? Very good. Right? They moved from taxing profits.
What did it say before you?
Prove. Right? They moved from taxing the profits to taxing the land itself. Right? Now, gentlemen, oftentimes in these blue-collar jobs, we're going to move back to our theme 5, labor and slavery. In these jobs, gentlemen, in these jobs, did those who are Mexicans, were they paid particularly well? Yes or no? No. They were not. Yes.
What was the pay cuts in California and like the freedom of Chicago and
Land rights.
Six pages.
Gentlemen, those who are Mexican, not paid particularly well. Does anyone remember? Gentlemen, does anyone remember there was a labor union that was formed between an Asian racial group and Mexicans? What was it called? What was it called? Stanley?
The United Farm Workers.
No.
No.
Well, yes, but not the one I'm looking for right now. Very good. The JMLA. What the hell is that? The Japanese Mexican Labor Association. Right? They form a labor union to combat low wages. They fight back against low wages. Right? They fight back against low wages. They fight back against low wages. Right? We also see the use of mutualistas or benevolent associations. Gentlemen, what did these mutualistas do? Raghav?
They like paid for you if you were like sick, so or if they gave you like financial support, so like if you were sick, if you're they pay to cover your wages and stuff, and it also pay for your healthcare.
Very good. Right? Mexican Americans got their healthcare covered, right? They got food covered, right? Yes, Don.
Yeah, I can't read the last part below lower wages.
Mutualistas and benevolent associations.
Wait, they got
Food covered, healthcare covered.
Did it help with
When they were
education?
striking.
Did it help with education too?
Yes, a little bit, right? They would pay for education. They would help support these workers as they were striking. John Paul, do you mind passing the black pen?
Decision. Oh, you got this. You got this. Can't hit the ceiling.
Gentlemen, in addition, we start to see Mexican Americans living and resisting, right, via labor unions, right? Right? Labor unions. Now, here's the deal. When those who are Mexican first move over to the United States, many of them are put in specific neighborhoods. Does anyone remember the name of these specific neighborhoods that the Mexicans were put in? Name of these specific neighborhoods. Name of these specific neighborhoods. We're moving to theme 3. Moving to theme 3. What neighborhoods were they called, Mr. Canales? Barrios. Barrios. Gentlemen, how were they supporting each other in the barrios? Giancarlo?
They would give them support as like they could stay in their houses, and then it's kind of like a pay it forward kind of thing.
Yep. Right? They could practice their own cultures in the barrio. Gentlemen, we had a name for this specific culture. Does anyone remember what this culture was called? There's a name for this culture, gentlemen. What was it called? Nihar? Chicano culture. Chicano culture. Gentlemen, what are some examples? Examples of Chicano culture. Nico. Food. Right? Like street tacos? Right? Ty? Zoot suits. Low riders. There was one more, gentlemen. One more. One more. You shot? Yes, tattoos. Right, tattoos. Right. Now, gentlemen, despite this, many of them were often discriminated against. In fact, zoot suits was a big reason why they were discriminated. Why were they discriminated against for zoot suits? Nico.
And like they were seen as wasteful, especially during wartime when they could instead be going like towards the soldiers.
Very good. This was excessive fabric use in World War II that should have gone to soldiers. Right? We also see a lot of tension here. We're going to jump back to our purple. Jump back to purple. I'm going to jump back to purple. Right? Gentlemen, for Mexican Americans who were in the barrios, many of them came over because the U.S. wanted them to work. The U.S. wanted them to work. Does anyone remember there was a program that was founded in World War II, right? Does anyone remember the name of this program? Gabe? Very good. Mexican Americans worked in the Bracero program. The Bracero program.
Credit to Ty.
Right? The Bracero program was started in World War II. Why was it started in World War II? What did the Bracero program want to do? Ruhan.
They wanted to like get Mexican farmers over to the U.S. So like soldiers were gonna only be farmers. Right? They wanted a replacement while they were.
Very good. Farmers needed people to pick fruits and vegetables. They needed them to pick fruits and vegetables, right? The Bracero program allowed them to pick fruits and vegetables, come over to the U.S. to do so. Right. Gentlemen, we also see, right, during this time, Mexicans were classified as white. As white, right? Now, here's the thing. In addition, right? In addition to resisting against unfair wages, Mexican Americans also resisted, right? Also resisted unfair school opportunities. Does anyone remember what happens? Does anyone remember what happens in 1968? 1968. Mexicans resisted schools by doing what? Arash?
I'm pretty sure funding was based on independence. So
Very good. Funding was based on attendance, so they walked out of school. This was in LA, the LA school walkouts. LA school walkouts. Right? The LA school walkouts. Okay. Funding was poor, they walked out of school. The last thing I want to do when we talk about Mexican Americans, we're going to go back to theme 3. I want to talk about modern day immigration. Modern day immigration. Can someone tell me, how are Mexicans viewed in the modern day? Gabe?
Not great. They're viewed as job stealers, or they bring drugs with them outside of time.
Right? Drugs with them. Right? This was very similar to 1920s attitudes. Right? Mexicans were seen as people that not only stole jobs, but people that should be deported. Right? Right? Deportation. Right? There were fears that more Mexicans, right, would dilute the American identity. Right? More Mexicans would dilute the American identity. Right? More Mexicans would dilute the American identity. Yes, Arash. Back then. But today, gentlemen, we see massive deportation efforts under the second Trump administration. Right? In fact, during Trump's first term as president, he tried to rescind DACA. Does anyone remember what DACA stands for? DACA. Ayushman.
It's like that program that basically like gives citizenship to people of like sign their daughters to take it.
Gentlemen, DACA gives people who illegally cross the border as kids. DACA gives people who illegally cross the borders as kids, right, a path to citizenship. Right. One of the things we talked about, especially with deportation, is the fact that there's, Trump had accidentally deported a few American citizens. That list has now grown. This now includes a 2-month-old baby, a 2-year-old child, and I believe a 5 or 6-year-old child, as well as a 7-year-old child. Right. All American citizens. All American citizens.
So one of the kids, wasn't their dad an American citizen?
Yes. Yes. Raghav. This was a national security issue. These migrants coming over the border would harm America, so we must keep them out. Yeah, just gang relations. They're part of gangs. Yes, Sam. Yes, that's right. There is a certain irony here, right? Obama has supported one of the largest number of those who cross the border illegally in the United States. You're absolutely right. Nico, last one.
So they sure didn't send these kids to El Salvador, right?
I actually don't know where they sent them. I think they put them in a immigration detention camp similar to like Angel Island, right? Now, gentlemen, we're finally on Irish immigrants.
Yes.
Hey, gentlemen, we're pushing. We're pushing.
Hey, we're working on it. Push. Nobody leave. If you leave, just leave. Don't come back.
Irish and Jewish immigrants. Gentlemen, let's start with the Irish. Why did they come?
Because they're
They're also being oppressed by the British.
Gentlemen, the Irish come because of the potato famine, because of British oppression. What about the Jewish people? Why do they come? Nico? Pogroms. What are pogroms, sir?
They were legalized mobs and like lynching, where they would just go and kill as many Jewish people as they could.
Very good. They were going out and kill those who are Jewish, right? They were state sponsored, right? For the Irish and the Jewish, right? Especially the Jewish people, right? Where were they? What were they blamed for? What were they blamed for?
Money stealing.
Money stealing. Dominic.
Oh, I was gonna say poverty. Or like.
Yes. Economic troubles, right? So they were blamed for economic issues. Gentlemen, they were blamed for economic issues. Arjan. Not quite. Not quite. The Irish were. Absolutely, the Irish were. Gentlemen, for the Jewish people, right? Does anyone remember where they would live? This was a test question, Vivon. The Pale of Settlement. Right, the Pale of Settlement. They were also, gentlemen, they would live in shtetls. Shtetls, right? These ghettos.
How do you spell it? The shtetl?
S-H-T-E-T-L-S. I mean,
The Jewish or Irish up there?
the Jewish. Gentlemen, we'll start with with both the Irish and the Jewish. When they came over to the United States, what immigration station did they arrive at? Ellis Island. Right? Ellis Island. E-L-L-I-S. Ellis Island. Right? Now, gentlemen, for the Jewish immigrants, where would they live? Dumbbell tenements. Right? They would live in dumbbell tenements. They would live in these ghettos. Gentlemen, what jobs? We'll start off with the Irish first. What jobs would they do? Railroad. What else? Factories. What about women? Domestic workers.
This guy's on fire.
What about the Irish? What jobs would they do? Or sorry, what about the Jewish people? What jobs would they do? What Jewish people? Shut them out. They would be tax collectors, factory workers. Gentlemen, they were also working in sweatshops, right? So factory workers, sweatshops, right? Right? They also, right, were peddlers. They were salesmen.
Is this Jewish, correct?
Yeah, these are Jewish. Now, gentlemen, let's jump to the Irish, back to the Irish. How were they viewed? Monkeys, apes, savages. Nico.
Like kind of similar as like African American.
Yeah.
Not white. And grass is green. Yo, Ty, go.
Gentlemen, take 30 seconds. Take 30 seconds Turn to your elbow partner, those around you. Does anyone remember any cartoons? What are some cartoons of the Irish that we looked at?
Why is this so?
It's my third time doing it.
Why is this so hot?
They turn off the AC. So we've been off since about 2. Stop!
That's awful. Like, what were settles again?
Ghettos that they would live at.
Hail of Settlement? What was that?
That was the region, the red and shaded yellow region in Eastern Europe. Now, gentlemen, I want us to divert our attention to the back again. I want to talk a little bit about Irish and Jewish labor unions. Right? We're almost there, gentlemen. We're almost there. Okay? Irish and Jewish labor unions. Right? Can someone tell me why are Irish labor unions and Jewish labor unions so important? Someone tell me, what did labor unions fight for?
Better pay, better work.
Better pay. Working conditions.
They also fought for their factories to be open instead of being closed. And that was in the 50-hour week.
Oh,
Remember the Sherman fire when the whole factory?
Oh, it was unlocked.
We fought for them to be open.
That's just one.
Unlocked.
Or like the situation with the women burned in the fire.
Yeah, for sure.
Are you still here?
Gentlemen, working hours, right? At the end of the day, Jewish workers, right? Especially Jewish women were super important, right? Jewish women, super important. Gentlemen, there was a certain, I know folks have mentioned it before, there was a factory fire. Does anyone remember the name of this factory fire? Caleb? The Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire, right? Gentlemen, this led to the uprising, right? There was the uprising of 20,000, right? That really pushed for these better conditions, right? They pushed for these better conditions. The Irish, in particular, gentlemen, were also compared against two other labor unions or two other ethnic groups. Anyone remember? Which two? Those who were black, those who were Chinese.
Blacks and Chinese.
Gentlemen, for those who are black, right, how would the Irish differentiate themselves?
Whiteness.
They would use their whiteness, right? Gentlemen, does anyone remember the law that was passed by Lincoln? What did that law do during the Civil War?
It required them to participate in civil war.
Raga?
It was I forgot the word, but they were forced to military service. Drafted. They were drafted.
Yes.
Called a draft.
And this, gentlemen, led to a riot, right? A riot. Black people did not want, those who were Irish did not want those who were black to come in, right? Because if they knew that they would take their jobs, right? The Chinese, there was a specific labor union that was started against the Chinese. The Chinese were often hired as what? To replace these workers? Scabs. Right? Does anyone know the name of the labor union? This was the extra credit question, by the way.
Bro.
Abimani?
Hey, good job, man. Good job.
It was a secret order.
I don't know what I meant. I know the figure.
Gentlemen, last thing about the Irish and Jewish workers. We're going to go back up top. We're going to go back up top. Casper, you okay? Gentlemen, Ishan? It was a labor union that the Irish started. Labor union for the Irish. Gentlemen, can someone tell me assimilation attempts? We'll start with the Irish. How did they assimilate? The Irish assimilated by green power, right? By labor unions. White collar jobs. What else? There were a few more. White collar jobs. Green power. They voted. Well, what about this? Whiteness. Right? Gentlemen, what about Jewish workers? How did they assimilate? Jewish assimilation. Caleb.
Though the parents were often like factory workers, their children would learn the language and get education, college education, which would give them a chance to like discover society.
Very good, right? So education. They would learn English. How else would Jewish immigrants assimilate? Yeah, Lorenzo. Yeah, flaunt wealth. How do you think I feel? Arush. Yeah, clothing. What else? Nico.
They'd leave behind a lot of their cultural traditions for American ones.
Good. They would give up traditions, right? Stanley? Yes. Bless you. Name changes, right? Very good. Gentlemen, that being said, Jewish assimilation, do people accept them? No. Right?
Were the Irish accepted enough to assimilate?
Yes, they were. Right? We see an increase of anti-Semitism. Right? We see an increase of anti-Semitism. Anti-Jewish sentiment.
No, we only have 10 more minutes to read. We have one more minute. 3 more minutes. 1 more minute. 3. We have 10 minutes. 1 second more time.
Hey, Mom.
Gentlemen, we are now on the Chinese. Why did the Chinese come? Why did my people come? Gold Mountain. What is it called? Gentlemen, Gumsan, right? Opportunities, right? We also have rebellions, like the Taiping Rebellion, right? Gentlemen, does anyone remember the way in which the Chinese were able to come?
Yes.
Paper sons, paper bricks.
That was after, but before. Alvin? Before, Terho. Credit ticket system. The credit ticket system. Like, I'm going to get a loan. You then go over, right? And then I will pay back my loan. Gentlemen.
Okay, boys, a few more minutes left. 25 minutes.
Gentlemen. What jobs would the Chinese work? Casper. Yes.
Railroad worker.
Railroad. Mining. Nico. Laundry. Ty. Don't make me kick you out. DQ slip indeed. Laundry. Factory work, right? Gentlemen, how are the Chinese viewed? Job stealing rats.
Wait, hold on. The cues?
Their hair, bro.
Yeah, they're cues.
Very good. They're cues, right? They were perceived, gentlemen, as rat stealers, right? Or sorry, as job stealing rats, right? Oh. Sorry, it's been a long day, gentlemen. It's been a long day. Gentlemen.
Stop talking.
I want to transition very briefly to legal de jure discrimination against the Chinese. Gentlemen, there were a bunch of cases that we talked about for Chinese immigrants. Let's start with some examples of legal discrimination against the Chinese. What were some examples that we got? Caleb.
They had to have permits to operate laundry.
Gentlemen. No, it's been a long day. It's been a long day for me too. I'm running on fumes right now, but we're gonna make this through. Okay, gentlemen. Gentlemen. Yickwell versus Hawkins, right? Requires permits for laundry. What other examples of de jure discrimination are there? Nolan. Yeah, foreign minors tax. What else? Zach. People versus Hall. What did that say?
Because the dude killed somebody. Oh, the white people can't testify.
No.
Oh, Chinese can't testify against whites.
Chinese can't testify against whites. Nico. Yeah, Chinese exclusion.
He's trying to people again.
Right? So, gentlemen, we have the Chinese Exclusion Act that banned the Chinese from coming over. What about Chinese women?
They use their body as money. What? That's true.
Christian.
They weren't allowed to say country because they were prostitutes.
Yes.
They were just bad people.
Does anyone remember the law that bans them? The Page Act.
How do you know this?
The Page Act or the Page Law, right? Page Act, Page Law. Gentlemen, there's also another form, a way in which the Chinese Exclusion Act was enforced. There was an immigration station. What was the name? Angel Island, right? Gentlemen, Angel Island, right? How did the Chinese use a loophole to get through? Paper sons, paper merchants. Right, they would claim to be U.S. citizens, right, born in this country. Very good. The last thing I want to talk about is actually going to go back to resistance. I want us to talk. Gentlemen, a little bit about three things. Right? Gabe, can you pass me a better pen? Better black one, black pen. Wait, can I catch it? Gentlemen, three things: Chinatowns, tongs, and thongs. What are Chinatowns? Ethnic enclaves.
Bro, he didn't choose you, dog.
Tongs. What are they? Tongs. What are they?
If I hear him.
Ty?
They were associated with gangs and offered protection.
Protection and gangs. Yes. Very good, Ty. What about thongs and huiguans? Zach?
They were places where they offered like support with education, like healthcare, like that.
Good. Offering social support. Very good. Gentlemen, I actually want us to start talking about Japanese immigrants from the back here. Right? Japanese immigrants, we're going to start from the back here. First of all, Japanese immigrants found ways to resist against discrimination.
So after this, how many more groups do we have?
3 or 4. But this should be fast.
Let's go, guys. Squad down.
Gentlemen, Japanese immigrants, right? Japanese immigrants worked where?
Sugarcane farms.
They were farmers.
Very good. They worked in Hawaii. Nolan, there should be a purple pen back over there. Do you have
Let's go, boys. Hey, shout out Angelo. I just want to shout out Angelo.
Hey, put down.
Shout out Angelo, man. Ty, just shout out Angelo because he's watching this right now.
Gentlemen, the Japanese work where?
Hawaii
Sugarcane. Right? Gentlemen, those who are Japanese, right? Gentlemen, those who are Japanese who worked on the Hawaii sugar plantations, right? Many of them were abused. How were they abused? Poor working conditions. Low wages. Poor homes, right? So we got barracks. Low wages. Poor conditions. Gentlemen, they teamed up. With another ethnic group. What ethnic group did they team up with?
The Pinoys.
The Filipinos.
Angelo. Ty, I said hi to Angelo.
We're on purple.
What?
Gentlemen,
60 minutes left, guys.
all right, gentlemen, couple of things. Barracks, poor wages, poor conditions, right? They formed an inter-ethnic labor union. Does anyone remember the name of this labor union?
FWA.
not the UFW. That was the Mexicans and the Filipinos, but Japanese and Filipinos. Dominic? Good. Gentlemen, they were called blood unions. Right? Blood unions. And we had the JFL and the FFL form the HLA. Can anyone tell me what does the HLA stand for?
Hawaii Labor Association.
Hawaii Laborers Association. Bless you. During this time, Japanese and Filipino laborers, they came up with a different way to share their culture. Right? What would they do, gentlemen? Food. Giancarlo? Pigeon. Gentlemen, what is pigeon?
It's like a
combination of their languages.
Very good, right? The combination of different languages. Gentlemen, we also see attempts to assimilate, right? Japanese attempts to assimilate. I want us to talk a little bit about those attempts. Sorry, excuse me.
Do you think this will end at 5?
I think it might go a little over. Gentlemen, before we talk about Japanese assimilation, I want to talk about why they were able to come. Why were the Japanese able to come? Okay. Gentlemen, I know you are all exhausted. I am too, right? I can't go until we get this done. You can go at 5 if you'd like, but I'm going to stay until we get this done, and I'm going to make sure those pictures are up on campus for y'all, right? Gentlemen, Japanese immigrants, why could they come to the U.S.? Picture brides, right? Why else? There was an agreement. Gentlemen's agreement, right? The gentleman's agreement said, hey, U.S. is not going to pass an exclusionary law banning the Japanese. Japan is going to self-limit immigration. We also see attempts to own land. Does anyone remember there's a name of a man who tried to own land? He owned the Yamato colony. Stanley? Yeah, Kyotaro Abiko.
I do not remember this.
Gentlemen, Abiko said owning land could get you in. Abiko, Abiko. Kyotaro Abiko said if you were owning land, if you own land, right, they could maybe accept you. But gentlemen, was that true?
No.
Nope. We see, and I'll add this in green, right? We see backlash against the Japanese. Backlash against the Japanese, right? Abiko wants to own land. Can the Japanese own land anymore?
No.
What law stops them from owning land? Alien land law. Gentlemen, alien land law, right? What does the alien land law say?
If you're not a citizen, you can have.
Good. No citizenship, no land. Right?
Yeah, we love that.
Gentlemen, no citizenship, no land. Right? What stopped the Japanese from becoming a citizen? What case? Ozawa v. U.S. Gentlemen, can someone tell me Ozawa versus U.S.? Ozawa versus U.S. How did the Supreme Court rule? It had something to do about being white, something to do about being Caucasian. What did it say? Alvin? Shh, Alvin. Very good. In Ozawa versus U.S., right? Ozawa claims to be white. Supreme Court says, yeah, you look white, but you are not Caucasian. No citizenship. Right? No citizenship. We also see, gentlemen, the Japanese being discriminated against in World War II. Where were the Japanese put in World War II, gentlemen? Very good. They were put in internment camps in World War II. Gentlemen, now we have the Japanese feeling as if they were stuck in between. Does anyone remember? We had the first generation and the second generation. Issei and the Nisei. Nisei is, gentlemen, Nisei is the second generation. Issei is the first. Nisei is the second. Issei is the first. Gentlemen, they often felt stuck in between, and they felt as if they had to prove their loyalty. Does anyone remember the name of a regimental combat group that tries to prove their loyalty to the United States? 442nd. Only 400. Right? So for the Japanese, gentlemen, the 442nd Regimental Combat Unit were Nisei that proved their patriotism. Right? Gentlemen, let's jump. Let's jump. Gentlemen, we've got about 2 more ethnic groups or 3 more ethnic groups to go, right?
Wait, Nisei fought for military, right?
Yep. Gentlemen, Filipinos. Why could they come to the U.S.? U.S. nationals. Gentlemen.
Guys, we're almost done.
Hang on. We're almost there. Manifest destiny can connect to what? Imperialism.
I can't even see. All right, I think I'm done.
Gentlemen, what war does American imperialism connect to? Shout it out. Gentlemen, after the U.S. takes control of the Philippines, right? The Filipinos come over because they are what? Gentlemen, the Filipinos come over to the U.S. because they're able to, because they are what? U.S. nationals. Forget American imperialism connecting to manifest destiny. Gentlemen, for the Filipinos, right? They are U.S. nationals. Right? What Supreme Court case connects U.S. nationals? It was a series of cases that says something about the rights of U.S. nationals. Turbo. The insular cases. Right? It says that Congress has the power to decide what rights apply what rights apply, right, to the colonies. Gentlemen, we're going to transition really quickly back to labor and slavery. We're going to talk a little bit about a Filipino-American labor leader. What's his name, gentlemen? Larry Itliong. Itliong starts a labor union. What's the name of the labor union?
AWOC.
Ishan.
AWOC.
AWOC. Gentlemen, what does AWOC stand for?
American Workers Association.
Agricultural Workers Organizing Committee. Itliong founds AWOC. Gentlemen, if you want to go, you can go. Gentlemen, hey, come on. Itliong founds AWOC. Okay? Itliong is instrumental in the Delano Grape Strikes. Gentlemen, who does Itliong team up with? Chavez. And Huerta.
1 for 11.
Gentlemen, does anyone remember? AWOC combines with another labor union. What name of a labor union does it combine with? Nico. NFWA. National Farm Workers Association. Nico, what labor union do those two form? AWOC plus NFWA creates what? UFW. Gentlemen, what does a UFW stand for? United Farm Workers. Very good. United Farm Workers. Gentlemen, almost there. South Asians. South Asians. Sick men. Sick men. Sick men. Gentlemen. Gentlemen, sick men. Sick men end up coming to the United States. Why?
British oppression.
British oppression.
Jobs.
Jobs. Right? Jonah, I'm going to write that up on the front really fast. Gentlemen, South Asians come over because of jobs and British oppression. Now, gentlemen, when they come over to the United States, when they come over to the U.S., right, sick men, right, were often treated very poorly. What laws were they subject to? Argon. Yes, gentlemen. Hey, South Asians, Asiatic Barred Zone Act.
Well, they couldn't, with that American Mexican.
Yep. Gentlemen, anti-miscegenation laws. Anti-miscegenation laws ban what? Very good. Gentlemen, hey, we had anti-miscegenation laws, right? In addition, they could not own land via what? Alien land laws. And could they become citizens?
No.
No. Gentlemen, what case said they could not become citizens?
Thin versus US.
U.S. versus Thin, right? Thind, U.S. versus Thin. Gentlemen, can someone tell me, what does U.S. versus Thin say? Something about white, something about Caucasian. What is it?
I got it to be both.
Mr. Jelani.
Oh no, it's the other way around.
Other way around. Thin is Caucasian,
But not white.
but not white.
So you have to be both. It's like contradicting.
Yep, it contradicts Ozawa. It contradicts Ozawa. That's right. Now, gentlemen, here's the deal. Here's the deal. They end up resisting this by doing what?
Mexican woman.
Very good. They marry Mexican women.
2 for 12.
And they form a new culture. What is this new culture called? Syncretic culture. They form syncretic culture. Okay? Now, oftentimes, gentlemen, nowadays, many South Asians immigrate because of what? Technology, right? Engineering. Does anyone remember the name of a visa? H-1B. H-1B.
Wait, came because of tech?
Yep, they became because of tech. Gentlemen, last thing, last two. We'll combine these together. Gentlemen, what's the difference between refugees and immigrants?
Refugees are forced to be here, and immigrants immigrate themselves.
Very good. Gentlemen, refugees were forced to leave. Refugees were forced to leave. Does anyone remember Vietnamese refugees? Why are they forced to leave? War, communism, right? Right? For the Vietnamese. Gentlemen, does anyone remember for the Vietnamese, right? What were the immigrants called? What were the refugees called when they came over here on that second, third, and fourth wave? Boat people.
I think I'll do that. Is that on the test?
Yep. Gentlemen, remember the boat people. You might, if you were an even period, you might not have gotten this yet, right? But for the Vietnamese, right, you have the boat people.
Oh, we're not talking.
Right? Gentlemen, for the Afghan refugees, why did they come to the U.S.? The Taliban takeover, right? Taliban takeover, right? The Taliban takeover, they are forced to move to the U.S., right? When they move to the U.S., gentlemen, right, they form little ethnic enclaves. For the Vietnamese, what ethnic enclave do they form? Little Saigon. What about Afghans? Little Kabul, right? Right, very good. Gentlemen?
What was it? Little, what's the last one?
Little Saigon.
Another one.
Little Kabul.
How do you spell it?
Kabul. Gentlemen, keep in mind, I just want to note two things. Both Afghans and Vietnamese will be on the final. That being said, there will only be, at most, 1 or 2 questions about it.
Are you done, Mr. Vietnamese and the. He's gonna take a picture.
Hey, folks, Folks. First of all, thank you so much for. Thank you so much. Gentlemen, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and end the stream.